Welcome to Alpha Wolf Capital. I'm Tim, and I want to personally thank you for stopping by. This channel is designed to help small companies, both public and private, gain exposure with potential consumers, investors, even partners. Take, for example, today's guest, CEO Jeb Besser with Modular Medical, ticker symbol MODD. Modular Medical is a development stage medical device company seeking to produce a next generation insulin pump to expand access to a higher standard of glycemic management for people with diabetes. This company was founded by Paul DePerna, which is the former founder of Tandem. Uh, there seems to be some confusion out there in the marketplace that there is a crowded space of diabetes insulin pumps. And while that is true in the higher end, more complicated pumps, it's not true when it comes to modular medical. But I'm going to let Jeb tell you more about that in just a minute. This is not to be taken as investment advice. I am not a certified financial planner. This is for education and entertainment purposes only. I encourage everyone to do their own due diligence. Hey everybody, Tim from Alpha Capital coming at you with a follow-up with Jeb Besser from Modular Medical Devices, ticker symbol MODD. Jeb, what's happening, man?
Hey, good to see you. Happy New Year.
Good to see you. Happy New Year. So, you had some interesting news that I thought was a positive. I don't know. I thought it would be interesting to get your take and see
Oh,
what your thoughts were. But
well, I guess, it's actually been kind of a big 4 weeks for news at Modular, for news around the industry and a little bit at Modular Medical too. So, it's probably a good time to catch up. So, let's talk about the Nudge BG announcement first. So I have to say, this is the most polarizing announcement we've ever made as a company since I've been CEO. And the reason, and people seem to be split into two camps on this one, or maybe even three. Camp number one says, well, Jeb, it seems like you're doing this. This must mean that you're commercializing no matter what. You have no interest in seeing what your strategic options are. Camp number two, I would describe as, well, I wanted you to have a name brand AID partner. And that's interesting, and we can address that. And then camp number three is, great. When's this going to come online as fast as possible? And, and so let's talk about Nudge BG, why Nudge BG, and what we're trying to accomplish here. So right now, as you know, we've tried to innovate on the hardware to make this product capable of the user learning it in less than 30 minutes.
yeah,
And just like a Keurig, you have to bring the product to the customer if they've been reluctant to adopt technology to date. If all we wanted to do was make something even more complex, we would look just like all the other guys. And the opportunity to get better care has existed for more than 20 years. And if 80% of the people won't adopt it, then you've got to do something different because the better isn't good enough to
right.
motivate people to get off the fence. We have to make the experience easier while still giving you 80 to 90% of that benefit of care. So Nudge BG fits into our reason to be because most AIDs that exist today, all AIDs except for Beta Bionics iLet that exist today, are slightly more to a lot more work to yield even better results. You announce meals, you announce sleep, you announce exercise, and you count your carbs as best you can, and you say I'm going to have pizza, and then you have a double sine wave because of the digestion times of the cheese, the carbs in the cheese, the crust, and the tomato sauce, which are different, et cetera, et cetera. Like you can geek out on this a lot. And some people do, and I applaud them for doing the work because you get much better time and range. However, it is more work.
Right.
And so Our mission is to make it easier. And I don't want to adopt an algorithm for the company, an algorithm on our platform that doesn't make it easier for the user. If we can make the hardware easier and make the software easier, that's an enormous win for this other group of patients who really should, people with diabetes who are suffering with this disease, who should have access to better care that's better than what they're getting with needles. So,
Right.
so Nudge BG was founded by Lane Despro. Lane Despro is an interesting guy. His son developed type 1 diabetes, and he was an automation engineer at Honeywell. And when he learned about what the continuum of care would be for his son, he said, "I can't believe that someone hasn't tried to automate this. There's so much repetitive stuff here that you should be able to make formulaic and easier." And he went to work at Medtronic. He co-wrote a lot of their AID algorithms and advised them on how to develop them. But of course, as we know, Medtronic's algorithms have ended up in a place where you're getting better care, but you're doing more work. And as he tells the story, actually, if you can find on the web a podcast I did with him a long time ago, where he tells the story of how his son sat him down when he was about to go to college and said, "Dad, this isn't going to work with my lifestyle anymore. You've got to tell me how to take more stuff out while still getting an acceptable level of care, because I'm not going to do this as an independent college student and then young adult." Now, this is the guy who's writing the algorithms, and this is still too much of a burden. So now let's broaden that out to the civilian population. So then he left Medtronic and he co-founded a company called Bigfoot, which was working on a dual chamber pump, which was supposed to be the artificial pancreas, right? Where you use multiple drugs, just like, Tim, you and I use 3 different hormones to manage our blood sugar, not just insulin. And so it's, the future might very well be multi-hormonal, and that's why we have a dual chamber pump in development, because, as of course, there's no predicate device, so that's why it's kind of on the back burner right now. But that was the idea at Bigfoot. They ended up failing to develop the product. They switched to a smart pen. They developed a sexy little user interface for endocrinologists, which became which was valuable enough to Abbott that they ended up both funding the company for a while and then ended up buying it for the assumed debt that the company developed. But Lane wrote a whole bunch of AID algorithms while he was there, and he's the lead author on these patents. And Insulet bought them for $23 million before Bigfoot was bought by Abbott, when they were in the process of burning the living room furniture in order to heat the house. And so, that tells you how well regarded he is in the industry. A lot of people have said, "Why didn't you go with a brand name?" Well, there are no brand names. The current manufacturers own their own AID algorithms and don't charge for them. So it's very much like antivirus software, where you can't charge for it, but people expect you to have it at some point. And Lane is a well-regarded guy in this space what can you learn from him coming on our platform? One, if he's written algorithms for the other guys in this space, you know that our device is capable of handling complex algorithms and pumping at low flow rates, which some people might think, well, this is just a starter pump that isn't as capable as the others. No, we are just as capable as the other pumps at pumping at low flow rates. We are just as accurate. We've just chosen to make the interface simpler. But what his goal is at Nudge BG is to make the experience simpler by eliminating carb counting and meal announcement. What if you could just put your pump on, prime it, turn it on, and then wear it throughout the day and not think about what you're doing? That would substantially reduce the training burden, and it would make your life easier while providing you with much better care than needles.
Right.
That's the dream. And the nice thing about Beta Bionics getting their iLet algorithm approved in May of 2023 is that they proved that the FDA was willing to accept a less accurate algorithm that involved less work. Because with the Beta Bionics iLet algorithm, you announce meals by saying small, medium, or large, and you enter your weight. You need a CGM on board to do it as well. And you have to wear a device that looks like a Medtronic MiniMed with 48 inches of tubing and sits on your belt and takes 40 steps to change the cartridge and all the other stuff that happens with a Medtronic. And because they copied the Medtronic hardware, basically, there's really not a lot of innovation in the hardware itself, except that they have an extra empty chamber and empty drivetrain in case in the future they get a second hormone approved. And I hope they do that, because we can use that as our predicate device for our patch pump with a better form factor. But anyway, so that's what we're trying to do. And the great thing is, because we have this this example from 2023 of what the level of acceptability is, we think that the FDA is very much on board with, we need more people to adopt technology. And you've heard me say this before, but I'll say it again. Robert Califf, outgoing head of the FDA at the ADA meeting in 2024, said, we will never have enough endocrinologists. We will never have enough diabetes educators. We must allow primary care to adopt technology. And that's what we need to do. I mean,
Yep.
Their need is desperate out there. There are 70% of the counties in the United States do not have a single endocrinologist. 70%. 50 million people don't live within a multi-hour drive of an endocrinologist. But only endocrinologists write pumps, and less than half of them write pumps. So we have to make this easier. And this is another step on, if we're going to add technology, we're not going to add complexity. We're going to add to the ease of use and ease of training for the user. So that's
100% sense to me.
Yeah. So that's
Which actually can I just make an observation?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that just make the whole piece more attractive?
You're not wrong. In fact, bizarrely, we once had a conversation with someone on the where they said, well, we would never consider your product as a partner unless it had an AID algorithm on it. And my reaction was, well, but you have your own AID algorithms. Why would you want me to have my own? You just rip it out. You put your own on, right? Like, wouldn't you want to just see that I have Bluetooth, I have NFC, I have the system on a chip processing power to handle your algorithm, and that I can do the low flow rates that you require? They really couldn't explain themselves. So I don't know what they're thinking, but they did say it. So there you go. And the nice thing about going with an entrepreneur like Lane is that in the early going here, this is not a terribly expensive project. And
that would have been my next question. So,
yeah,
I mean, I don't think this isn't costing you an arm and a leg.
No, this is a few $100,000 for the next 6 months.
Okay.
And that doesn't mean that it's not significant. It means that this isn't going to break the bank right now. We want, perversely, hardware, you don't get to do a human trial except usability. Software, you have to do some human study work.
Okay.
So this will require some human study work, but that's okay. We think this is, if cleared, this would be a great improvement to the product that would make the training time even shorter and the user work even better, and the ability for a nurse to train you rapidly even better for their $50 that they're going to make training people. So I see it as a win-win. I see it as additive to the asset. And when people say, well, where's the name brand? There are only two other unpartnered AID algorithms out there. There's Tidepool, which is a nonprofit, which is FDA approved. But is not would not be as easy to use as Nudge. And then there's a group out of Cambridge University that is much like the traditional algorithms. Let's put it that way. So anyway, so that's the Nudge BG situation. I look forward to working with them, and we think that Lane will be a great partner. And the best guy for the job, frankly, who's been thinking about how do I make this easier for a long time, because he wants to accommodate his son's wishes that I need to make this easier for the rest of my life. So that's Nudge BG. There have been a couple other developments since we last talked. The first of which is that Embecta, which got cleared, I think, 4 business days before we did, on their patch pump, shut the whole program down and fired 100 people. Now, a bunch of people have said to me, well, gosh, Embecta, which is, a company that has $1 billion in revenues in standard medical supplies, if they couldn't make a go of it, why do you think you can make a go of it? And I guess my basic response is the product was a Me Too product. I'm surprised it got as far as it did. because from a commercial analysis perspective, because if you enter this space with a product that looks just like everyone else, except you're 15 years behind in terms of both scaling up your manufacturing and integrating with the rest of the ecosystem, you are going to spend 10 years and $500 million and you still might not be successful. My goal would be to spend a tenth of that and target a totally different audience that currently isn't detailed. And doesn't have a product. So I'm not surprised that there isn't an acquirer. The Invecta pump was much like the Insulet pump in that you throw all the electronics away every 3 days. Except they're 15 years and millions of process engineer hours behind in terms of optimizing how you make that.
Right.
So how do you sell on if you're not differentiated, except that their reservoir was 3 mLs, how do you make that work? It's the same, it's the same reason that we're going to hit cost parity with Insulet at much, much lower volumes, because they're throwing away the electronics, the most expensive componentry, every 3 days, and ours lasts for 90. And there's no technical reason, if we do more testing, that we can't potentially extend it to 180.
So that very crowded space.
There is a very crowded space. It's the 20%. And then there's the 80% that hasn't adopted technology. And I think Beta Bionics, which filed to go public on Monday this week, what they're arguing is that there's a lot of room in that 80%. And at Modular Medical, we agree. We think there's plenty of room for multiple players in that 80%. And we both have the message that this needs to be easier. We've just come at it from totally different directions. They came at it from let's make the software easier to interface with the CGM and have the user do somewhat less work.
Right.
But in exchange, have somewhat less accuracy. We came at it from the perspective of you have to make the hardware easier to use, less complex interface, much less costly. And then we'll add software as we go. So where do we meet in the middle? I don't know. There's 80% of the market that's up for grabs. I'd say the major difference is that Beta raised $60 million in November at a $500 million pre, and we raised $8 million in November at a 55 or 60 million pre, and so their access to capital seems.
I don't know.
Mr. Market makes those decisions. I don't make those decisions, but I'll just say, I think it's probably going to be harder to innovate on the hardware coming from the software side than it is to take a hardware platform that's now been cleared by the FDA that separates the electronics and then add software to it. But we'll see how that all works out. So Beta is filed to go public. I would expect that deal to happen in the next 45 days. I don't have any special insight on that, but
Can I ask you a question about that?
Yeah.
So if they go public, and regardless of what happens with the stock or whatever, at some point, do things free up in a way for you after they go public?
Well, I think it does. It does allow us to, there are 5 banks on the cover of that deal. If we were to think about a process, the worst thing to do is to do a process in a half-assed way, or to do it, or to only have your only alternative be a process. So when people tell me, oh, well, it seems like you've abandoned this idea of trying to monetize the asset before a full commercial launch, I would just say, if you want to guarantee that you're going to get a bad result from a monetization process, don't have any plan for a commercial launch.
I would agree 1,000%.
I think, look, I'm agnostic. I want the best return for the shareholders, and whether or not that return comes from a limited commercial launch, a full commercial launch, or a monetization, whatever is best.
If you're just going to do something and then sit and wait for the phone to ring, I think that becomes
you're going to give up a lot of leverage. You're going to give up a lot of leverage, and I think the nature of our product, the fact that you can learn it so easily, the fact that it doesn't have that many configurations, the fact that the clinician or the nurse could make money training someone on it themselves, because $50 for less than 30 minutes is an acceptable amount of money for a lot of people, especially someone in a primary care physician's office or a nurse educator. I think that we have a very differentiated way of going to market, which allows us to launch this product both through distributors, the pharmacy channel, and through a very, very small direct sales effort to the 200 high volume diabetes educator practices who drive most pump choice in the United States. Not to try and convince them, oh, I was going to write MiniMed, but now I'm going to write this. To convince them that someone has rejected all three, I still want to try and get them to adopt some kind of technology. So I think beta coming out is great for us, because now instead of me talking about a comp like Insulet that's doing $1.5 billion in revenue, that's been around for 15 plus years, that is trading at 10 times revs, I can be talking about someone who got cleared in May of 23, launched in October 23, and now has, I don't know what the number is now, but back in August, September, it was 10,000 customers. So we've covered Embecta, why I think there was no interest in that platform. We've covered beta. I guess the only other new news here is there's a private company called Secure, CEQUR, they were originally a type 1 pump company, fully electronic. It never got cleared by the FDA, even though they raised more than $100 million for the platform. Before that failed completely, they purchased a pump from they purchased something called Simplicity from J&J. And Simplicity is a pure mechanical bolus. So you wear it on your abdomen or on your arm, and you can push a button through your clothing to give yourself the bolus. There's no reporting, there's no alarm system, there's no basal drip. It's a pure convenience play. If you like wearing something and pushing a button better than the smart pen or better than the auto injector pen that comes with your prescription, then this might be interesting for you. I don't think it's the same market. There isn't a huge benefit for the clinician. It's pure convenience, and you're competing against something that is free, which is a syringe or an auto injector.
Right.
I think the fact that the product has been in multiple people's hands sort of indicates, it hasn't been a roaring success so far. Secure raised, long after the type 1 product was dead, Secure raised $115 million in 2021 to relaunch this, and just announced on Tuesday that they had raised another $120 million to continue to commercialize this, and announced that they had 6,000 customers on it. My current line can do 6,000 customers.
Yeah.
So now, granted, not at great margins, because that's a very manual line, and we are in the process of, and will continue to add automation and Plastics 101 scalability. But we're a full-blown electronic pump with the right accuracy for basal and bolus and the alarms and the other things that make us a benefit to the clinician and the patient, even if they don't get the bolus quite right. And I think they're fundamentally different products, but I don't know what the valuation was on this financing, but what I do know is, once again, here's someone who's spinning the story that there's a group of people out there who need something that's really easy to use. But this is not. I'd say to call this in the same space as us, as far as it being a pump, a true pump, is somewhat inaccurate.
Stretch.
Yeah. But hey, there's lots of money flowing into the space. It's just it just hasn't found its way into my pocket.
They haven't. Well, apparently people are either they don't just clearly don't understand the story, or I don't know. Did you piss a lot of people off or something? Are they betting against you, or what's the story?
Not really sure. But look, we continue to be just as positive on, people keep saying it seems like your trajectory has changed. And I sort of scratch my head and say, I think we're laser focused on delivering an asset commercially that will make things easier for a group of people who have been underserved by the current products.
I think you've been very transparent and very straightforward. You haven't changed your tune the entire time. It's been the same thing the whole time, right? Since you and I first started talking.
I guess we've added the GLP-1 thing. We've added the GLP-1 thing
Well,
because
yeah,
it requires zero changes to our hardware
right.
to explore.
Which actually, I just interviewed LifeMed, Justin
Oh,
Schreiber,
yeah.
the CEO over there. And what did
Yep.
he say? I'll tell you what he said. He said the GLP-1, I think he said there's like 75 potential types of GLP-1 that are like right now, going through clinical trials, right?
I'm not going to contradict Justin, but I think the number's even bigger than that.
So, okay. So I'm just sitting here and what did he say? He said, look, we can keep trying to teach people how to change their lifestyle, work out, eat salad, all that stuff, drink more water, or we could get people on GLP-1, some type of GLP-1, because the stuff is like miraculous. I mean, that's essentially what he said, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I have to look, if there is not a big side effects and all that stuff, and this is giving people a better quality of life, right?
Yep.
Then why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? But you got to get the cost of it down, right? You've got to get the application maybe correct, where a lot of people have had negative reactions to the dosages, right?
Right. That's right.
So we're doing things, maybe the drugs is really a miraculous drug, but we're not exactly handling it the way it should be handled. So I think
just the Blue Cross stat that came out in June was 35% of the patients in their system are dropping within 4 weeks and 50% within 12.
Right. Because they don't like the side effects of
it's some combination of costs and side effects. Yep. And I'll warranty all day long, if you can tolerate a one size fits all weekly shot, you're never going to wear a pump. And that's fine. That's not our opportunity. Our opportunity is to do one of a couple things. The first thing is potentially to allow you, if we use a rapid acting GLP-1, if your dose is too high, to back off without living with the consequences of going too high for a week or longer.
Right.
That's one. That's very simple, right? So, and in the same vein, perhaps your ideal dose is between two fixed doses. Wouldn't you like to know that? And wouldn't you like to know that not because you're titrating up so slowly in increments and spending money with an ineffective dose month after month after month until you hit your recommended dose? Wouldn't you like to do it? Wouldn't it be better to do it with a pump and titrate up on a smoother curve and then say, "Ooh, that was a little too high," and back off again and try and hit that ideal dose and then switch to a weekly shot? And finally, what we showed in our proof of concept study was something very unexpected. Let's step back and let me give you just 1 minute of history here. So the category was invented by this drug, exenatide, trade name Byetta, where they were giving it as a dose. The half-life of Byetta in a human being is about an hour. And so they were doing it as a 2 to 3 times a day bolus only, right? So it was on board only, call it 4 or 5 hours a day. And so they saw about 3 pounds of weight loss after a year. And they said, wow, this is great because people on insulin who are also marrying it with this are losing weight and not gaining weight. How exciting. I don't think anybody would be excited about 3 pounds of weight loss now.
No.
And AstraZeneca ran a clinical study in 2020, which proved definitively if you made everyone in a clinical environment do 3 boluses a day, you don't lose any significant weight. So rapid acting boluses by themselves do not cause you to lose significant weight. They do have better glycemic control than Ozempic, as our study proved, but they do not cause you to lose weight in any significant amount. So then the industry said, well, if we just saturate, the breakthrough of Ozempic and I don't know if you want to call it Wegovy or Mounjaro or whatever. The breakthrough of the long-acting GLP-1s is if we sit up at the maximally tolerated dose on this receptor, we're going to get these profound results. that Justin's referring to. However, if you can't tolerate that dose, that's going to be a problem for you. So what our proof of concept study showed was that it turns out that it appears that there's a synergy where you can have a lower constant dose and bolus around meals and achieve roughly the same weight loss. And now there's a value. If you can't tolerate, if you want the best results possible and you can't tolerate the higher level constant dosing, wouldn't it be better to be able to get to those more profound results by just adding a bolus that's delivered mechanically to bring you up? And then even if you've gone a little too high, the effect is transient and then you come back down. And so we're going to take that and we're going to try it in human beings this year. We'll see which compound we use.
Wait. Let me make this point. Doesn't that add to the effectiveness of this whole thing?
Well, it's sort of like the old comment people used to make about people have made about cameras. Why are cell phone cameras popular? Because the best camera is the one that you have with you. And the reason I make that analogy is the best GLP-1 for you is what you can actually tolerate that has efficacy. So if this enables a subset of the people who have dropped off therapy at 4 weeks or 12 weeks who look and say, wow, I'm going to try that again and feel seasick for a week or have vomiting or diarrhea or other gastrointestinal side effects,
yeah,
I'm not sure that I'm going to do that. Now someone could be offered potentially an opportunity to say, oh, okay, well, I'm going to try this at a lower dose, bolus around meals by pushing a button and perhaps get that synergistic effect that allows me to have better results even at that lower dose. So that's
right.
the idea. It's not for everyone. It's for non-responders or
What was the cost of finding that out for your product?
$120,000.
I think it was $120,000 well spent.
Oh yeah. No, I think I'm not sure exactly. As you pointed out, there are more than 75 compounds in development. There are probably another three or 400 that are sitting in the broom closet somewhere. Some of which might be very efficacious, but have no way of being delivered because they dissipate in the body too rapidly. So maybe one of those is the right fit for our pump.
Right.
That's why, I mean, look, I want to be very public about this because our pump is uniquely situated to offer this benefit because the accuracy requirements for GLP-1s, the dosage forms, the amount of drug you need on board for 3 days, the materials you need, and all fit perfectly with our pump. And it has to be at a cost point where you can bundle it with the cost of the drug. And it has to be easy enough to learn that you could have a pharmacist explain to you how it's going to work for you. That is look, I'll tell everyone what we're trying to do. It's not a secret because what I don't know is what's the ideal compound or compounds that should be put in the pump. And that's what our next set of, ideally we'll find a partner or partners where we can enable them to get better result, deal with a greater population of patients by using their existing drug in another form factor.
I would say that you know what? You're starting to make me angry. I would say that having your pump approved the way it has been approved for a category that sounds to me like it's going to be here for a while. It's not going away. This isn't going to be it doesn't sound like this is going to be a fad, right? So I would suggest that having done what you've done puts the company in a very good position. You're not just reliant. You better knock it off. You're not just reliant on the insulin pump, right? I mean,
I think we view our pump as a broad-based platform that you can use for lots of different things. There might be other applications in endocrinology that have nothing to do with insulin or GLP-1s that we should be exploring.
Right.
And that's the other reason to be very public about this, because maybe there's an institution out there that looks at what we've got in terms of accuracy and specs on our pump and says, aha, I have a drug for that. And I have an application for that that's in desperate need of something that fits this profile.
Yeah. Jeb,
Look,
let me ask you.
Insulet gets a high single-digit percentage of their revenue from Neulasta to Onpro, which they sell with Amgen, where they sell the pump to Amgen, and Amgen fills it up and gives it to cancer patients.
Let me ask you something.
Mhm.
You plan on like quitting or giving up anytime soon?
No. Well, hold on. If the, Rick Pitino said Larry Bird isn't walking through the door anymore when I was growing up in Boston. Look, if Larry Bird walked through the door tomorrow and said, I can convince you, Jeb, that I'm going to take this forwards and I'm going to be just as good a steward of shareholder value as you are, my $1 salary can be theirs, or maybe something much more substantial. Because I'm passionate about making sure that this asset works, but it doesn't have to work because of me.
Okay, that was actually a very good that's a good way of putting it. I guess the thing that I'm trying to convey to people is it's really difficult to beat somebody that doesn't stop fighting. It's really tough, right? I mean, if and you do not come across to me as a guy who's going to stop swinging, right? And you're not sitting still waiting for the phone to ring. You're taking some very methodical steps.
We're progressing the product towards being able to launch it
and increasing the value
with as us or as part of something else.
Exactly. And you're increasing that value is how I see it, right?
Yep.
And if you're increasing that value, it would be very apparent that you're completely solely relying upon the fact that you want somebody to come scoop you up.
Which is a great way to get a really bad price.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. So you move forward, you do what you like you're going to take it commercial, right? Because ultimately, if you don't get what is, I would consider fair value for what you've created, why would you sell it? Do you just go commercial?
Someone's going to take it commercial.
Right.
Someone. And then whether or not that's us or whether or not that's someone else is, well, we'll just see how that all plays out.
Right. But I can say this, if it is easier for the general practitioner to be able to, and if the nurse can make $50 for a half hour's worth of work, look, this to me is a no-brainer. This to me means you're going to get this in more people's hands, and more people are going to get a better quality of care. So
the system will save, and everyone who we get to wear a pump will save the system $10,000 a patient year.
Right. So if people don't understand this, that's fine. I'm a patient person. I'm very patient. This story will eventually play out, and it will become obvious. I've been through this a million times, right?
Hmm?
I see all the elements that you want to see, and even more so. I mean, there's some good things happening here, and this is a big problem. It's a big problem, and this is an opportunity to make people's lives better. So I think right now, maybe because you're a pretty straightforward guy, you're a straight shooter. You've said from day one that you would consider, selling it off. But you also are a very smart guy. You know what the other valuations have been of pumps that have been approved. You're nowhere in that range. It would be an insult if somebody were to come to you and offer you that. And if that's not where, I mean, you haven't even hired. I guess the thing I was going to say is when this other company is done, can you then hire someone that could explore the option of knocking
Yes,
on doors?
yes, yes, yes. And I think, I have some level of preference for the right partner to do that, being someone who is on the cover of this deal.
Okay. That was where I was going with that. So
Yep.
it may look like you're dragging your feet, but there's a reason for that, and that reason will be cleared up sooner than later, right?
Yep. Yep. One way or the other, it'll be cleared up sooner than later. Yep.
Okay.
And look, even if we run a process and the buyer says not right now, I don't believe that this almost pumper space is real. Show me 5,000 patients. That's valuable information because it
Right.
determines how much scale you need
Right.
and how much expenditure it's going to take to get there. If we have to raise a lot more money, we have to deploy it in order to derive the value to offset the dilution that came with that money.
Right. Who's the bigger shareholder?
Uh, my fund and I mean, look, I bought 100,000 shares in the open market in the $1.60 some range a month ago. Generally people sell for lots of reasons. They only buy for one reason. I'm, having the
I
stock
just want to make that fact.
be below that level is just as painful for me as it is for other shareholders because, I continue to eat my own cooking.
Right. But you know what? I think you're making a good bet. So
I think so too.
I would suggest this to people, and I actually suggested this with Justin. If you're not in mod, here's what would say. I'm not telling anybody to go all in, don't. But I would say this: buy one share, buy one share, because that way, and sign up for their email alerts, and that way you'll pay attention to what's happening with the company, right? If you buy one share, you're guaranteed that you will pay attention to what's happening. Now, you may regret the fact at some point that you only have one share, but it will keep it in front of your face. So
Mhm.
that's my recommendation. Buy one share. I think it's at a very interesting level right here. It's at an area of support technically at about 130. Can it go lower? Anything's possible. Anything's possible. How would I view that? I would view that as an opportunity to back up the truck. That's how I would view it. But this is an interesting area of support. I don't think you're gonna get killed. You can scrape the sofa in the car and probably come up with the change to be able to buy that share. So that's where I'm at. Okay.
I can't comment on the cleanliness of anyone's car.
Jeb, I appreciate you taking the time to come and do this, man. When you have another news announcement that people get confused about, we can have you back.
Okay. Very good. Thanks a lot for the time.
All right, Jeb, hold on a second. I'm going to shut this. Thank you for tuning in to another CEO interview here at Alpha Wolf Capital. Today we had Jeb Besser, CEO of Modular Medical, ticker symbol MODD. I hope you enjoyed today's interview, and if you did, do us a favor, give us a like. How about giving us a share? And while you're at it, make sure you smash that subscribe button. All of those things are very important to us here at Alpha Wolf Capital, and we appreciate you taking the time to do that. Until next time, stay safe. Alpha Wolf Capital wishes you the very best of success.